started as a great big adventure, nothing more. I was going to build her with Pájaro and then sail around the world. Pájaro said he could finish her within 3 years, with Bunga Day and then Balungo and his family helping us with materials, and there were Mbena from all over the rainforest helping us too. But then Pájaro died, and then the boat almost died too. No one to take over. But finally, Pájaro's brother Rufino came to the rescue, and we managed to finish her. We launched her in 1985 and named her the Pájaro Hai, the magical bird, in honor of Pájaro, and I still thought she was made for travel and adventure. But then the Nature Conservancy got wind of her, and saw the great connection with the rainforest, her crew being half Mbena, and asked if they could use her for a conservation event they were planning. That's how it all began, this struggle to protect the rainforest and its people, now 26 years and counting. It wasn't altruism. It was a kind of moral trap. These Mbena were my friends, and I had the money and the connections, and they needed to save their world, and they trusted me, and now that I was in, there wasn't any way out. Back in the USA, the Twin Towers were still new, and the country was surging ahead with computer technology. I'd been out of the Peace Corps for 15 years, and my software company was doing well. I discovered a kind of idiot savant talent which allowed me to underbid competition by an average 80% and still make good money. Even then, my focus was healthcare systems. Medicare, big insurance companies. With my quirky talent, I rewrote the Alabama Medicaid system in a few weeks so that it ran in 10% of the time and saved 90% of the running costs. I was still a trainee. Then I wrote a sleuth system for Medicare, which discovered $10 million worth of provider abuse in its very first week. I was living 2 lives, mainframes and dugout canoes, 5-star restaurants and smoked iguana, and with the Pájaro Hai I was bringing these 2 worlds together. We had hundreds of events with all kinds of organizations. Here's Balungo receiving his prize for winning the paddle race at the Tall Ship event at the 200th anniversary of the United States Coast Guard in Washington. Here he is with his dugouts at the Twin Towers in New York City. Here we are in Boston with the Blue Bloods. We were featured on national TV in the late 1980s, hoisting a nervous Al Roker up the mainmast. We did one great event for the United Nations where we sailed the East River in New York with people from 43 nations on board and a flag for each in the rigging. Here's another event in Miami at the United Nations Global Assembly of Women for the Environment. Kennedys and Rockefellers, princes and presidents, senators and ambassadors, dukes and duchesses and princesses, all came to see the magical boat with its rainforest crew, and in this way we spent 5 years trying to save harpy eagles and Siberian tigers and African lions and the world in general. But then things began to change. In New York my software was getting better and better, but the more powerful it got, the less popular it became. A nasty dispute erupted at a big Connecticut insurance company when I offered to replace a brand new 3,000-page database system that had taken them 2 years to build with a much more efficient 11-page system that took me 2 weeks to build. We created the Comprehensive Productivity Resource, or CPR, which could produce complex systems in days or even hours instead of months or even years. But it was stonewalled almost everywhere we went. We finally got it into Fleet Bank and then Bank of America to process their consumer loans, but only after we promised to severely limit its power. Most of my efforts to supply Medicare and other healthcare clients with super-efficient solutions were basically ignored, and I watched as some of my clients became bloated and less competitive, and as some collapsed from the weight of these inefficiencies. A friend called my software disruptive technology, a phenomenon touched upon by Machiavelli 500 years ago, and further developed by Einstein, Clayton Christensen, and others. Important game-changing ideas disrupt the status quo and threaten existing profit patterns, so they are usually opposed by the powerful and often by the ignorant as well. The recent bestseller, Why Nations Fail, points out that the phenomenon has been a major contributor to the decay and ultimate failure of great enterprise and great society for thousands of years. So at that moment I was really feeling very frustrated in my technological life and struggling to overcome the rising resistance. But then something terrible happened to the Pájaro Hai. After a month-long series of events in Montego Bay, helping to save their coral reefs, we sailed for Panama and hit a coral head during a storm, and were shipwrecked on Bajo Nuevo, 135 miles south of Jamaica. This was devastating and a major turning point for the Embena and I. By then, they realized that all the effort on the Pájaro High had had little effect on the noose tightening around them in the Darién, and I myself was becoming increasingly disillusioned about the conservation strategies we were supporting. They didn't seem to be having any effect at all on the global rate of deforestation. These insights about the nature of business and environmental destruction were depressing, but at the same time they were crucial, because they were forcing me to see the world from an opposite perspective. I'd always assumed that humanity shaped its own future, in a struggle of good versus evil, of reason versus chaos, of excellence versus mediocrity. But now I saw that our path to the future is actually shaped by one simple imperative: seize the opportunities in front of you. And in this we are just like the termite, but with this difference. Our cleverness constantly spawns new and ever more destructive opportunities. And I realize now that more than any other factor, the action of this simple rule in the presence of a continuous stream of opportunities shapes the rise and fall of civilizations and the damage we do to our natural world, and that reason and good and bad and right and wrong have very little to do with it. And I understood now that because very few can resist this seize the opportunity imperative, we need to get inside the overall dynamic and modulate the nature of the opportunities it creates before they emerge, if we are ever to protect our nation or the environment from ourselves. And the years rolled on. But in the Darién, this new perspective revealed new possibilities which gave us new hope. And though we were by now well into middle age, we began again to dream. And we began to rebuild the magical bird, this time bigger, faster, and more beautiful than ever. I'm Jim Brunton, and I'm here on a beach in Panama's Los Santos province where we're getting the Pájaro High ready for its next odyssey up the west coast of the USA. With almost half a lifetime in the rainforest and the other half observing the evolution of the healthcare crisis in the United States, I've been witness to the dynamics of change in two evolving worlds. One evolving towards more poverty and less rainforest, and the other toward a culture of more of me and less of us. And though I believe that it's possible to change these trends, the problems are so insidious and unyielding that I've been tempted on many occasions to just give up and leave them to others. But I finally decided that there could be no excuse for destroying the Siberian tiger, or the African lion, or the United States for that matter, and that since we are principal participants in this dynamic, we must do our best to change its outcome. If it all falls apart, our excuses to our grandchildren, or our great-grandchildren, or our great-great-grandchildren would sound absurd. We didn't see it coming. We were too busy making money. We were afraid. It was someone else's job. This funding initiative is one way to participate. We invite you to join us as we complete the next chapter of our adventure by providing funds to 1. Prepare the Pájaro High and her native crew for the promotional odyssey up the coast of California. 2. Support the yacht and her crew during the odyssey. 3. Support events on the Pájaro High in California aimed at supercharging the Kaimokara project. Events that will be hosted by myself and Balungo and my indigenous colleagues, and designed to inform and inspire and enlist the active support at each city visited of the press, major blog owners, key business and political figures, you and I, and the American people. We have many years of experience with events of this type and a reasonable expectation of success. In 25 years, no invitation to come aboard the exotic Pájaro High has ever been turned down. And to support Kaimokara and my courageous friends, I've written a book about the long struggle and its hard-won solutions. To make these solutions accessible and more compelling, I've embedded them in an autobiographical adventure tale of the two lives of Johnny Gullible, a man with an insatiable thirst for solutions and a gift for understanding complex continuums, not only in his head, but in his bones. So you'll find drama and death and damnation in this adventure tale, but between the lines you'll also find a carefully designed, scalable solution for rainforest conservation in the Darien with the potential to increase local incomes by 1,000% per hectare of rainforest, using only 0.2% of the biomass per year. And there's a struggle in the Darien to build a magnificent 95-foot sailboat in order to carry a rainforest message to the world, and there's shipwreck and tragedy, injustice and ruin and rebirth. But you'll also find a David versus Goliath bidding battle against IBM and EDS and GTE, during which Johnny Gullible designs a deceptively simple national healthcare model which reduces bureaucracy to the vanishing point while exerting gentle downward pressure on healthcare costs, and which, far from undermining America's economy, is structured to enhance its vitality. As a bonus, the system pits self-interest against self-interest in order to forestall and reduce healthcare-related legal conflict. These are incredibly long and difficult struggles in two separate worlds, but Johnny never loses hope, and neither do I, nor can you for the sake of our progeny. Of course, I can't be certain that the solutions proposed are the best solutions, but I am certain that we the people need to begin to discuss these critical issues in a fresh light, so that definitive solutions may emerge. Perhaps all this seems too grandiose, or so difficult as to be beyond human capacity, but it's obvious to many that we must act if our grandchildren are to have rich and healthy lives. And because our great nation's greatness is fading now, and the natural world around us is diminishing now, we need to act now. Thank you.
Voy, aunque yo voy mal, que sea en ese mar, ¿no? Me coge de tormenta, pero voy, aunque arrastrado voy.